Today I'm going to deliver for you the Business Insights report for a dummy or test client that we use in all our training and software testing called Smith Engineering. It's based on a client we actually worked with here in Australia a few years ago, but we've obviously changed the name and some of the details so it's confidential. I'm going to walk through the report in two different parts. Firstly, I'm going to deliver sections of the report exactly the way I would deliver it to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who are the owners of this business. But I'm then also going to pause and explain to you exactly what the key points are that I'm highlighting on each and every page of the software. So let's get started. Firstly, in the report, we're presenting an overview. We're showing clients two things: the contents of what we're about to deliver, and secondly, where that information came from. Typically, we collect 4 or 5 years financial statements, and also some benchmarking data to allow us to compare the business with industry competitors. We get some advice from owners and staff, which includes about 150 questions in a non-financial questionnaire. And then we also look at a search for the legal databases that we use. In Australia, that's ASIC. In the United States, that might be the SEC, to actually determine and confirm exactly the ownership structure of the business, so we can look at whether that's an issue as we start to think about and prepare for the exit plan. And we also then look at the performance of the business based on economic data, industry data, and a whole stack of databases and benchmarking tools that we use, including our own data that we've collected from clients over the last 12 years. Now, when we get into the report, when you get to page 5 of the Smith Engineering report, you'll see a strategic overview. It's a colourful scorecard designed to summarise the actual performance of that business in one page. It should allow you to highlight to the client exactly where the business is up. Let's get into how I would actually deliver the first section of the Insights report, which is an overview and the structuring. Then we'll talk about what to highlight when we're doing that presentation. Now, if we go to page 5, we're looking at a strategic overview. In Smith Engineering, the overall score is C, which is exactly in the middle of the range. The highest score is A+, and the lowest is E-. So C is bang smack in the middle, which means the business is about average. But you'll notice on this scorecard, there are different scores for different categories. For things like financial, credit, and benchmarking, we've actually got a very high score, A+, B+, A-, which means the business is performing particularly well financially. Hence, the circles that surround those scores are green, indicating a really good score. The circle around the credit score is orange, which says it's about middle of the range, and it is for credit. But you'll notice something outstanding. Both the non-financial and exit readiness scorecards are quite low, D- and E-, and they're surrounded by a red circle, which means it's not a great result. This is quite typical for lots of the business owners that we work with. Many of them have great financial performance, but not so fantastic non-financially. So that's just a summary view of the whole report, and I actually don't spend a lot of time on that with clients until we get into the detail. What I need from the client is for them to understand that we've done, as the advisor, a lot of work in understanding exactly how their business works, financially, non-financially, how well prepared is it for exit, how well prepared is it when we start to benchmark it against industry averages, clients and competitors, etc. The next thing we look at then on page 6 and 7 is the company structure. Who owns which assets? Now, it doesn't matter which jurisdiction you're in, this is an issue for exit planning all around the world. Most business owners have some vague understanding of the ownership structures, some better than others, some have it quite wrong. Some simply don't understand exactly who owns what asset. For example, is the business owned in a company? Is it in a trust? Is it in an LLC structure? And what does that mean, importantly, from an exit planning point of view? It makes a big difference. It also makes a big difference, again, depending on where you're based, from a taxation point of view. So on page 7, we simply present a structure diagram. In this example, we're showing that the business is actually owned by a company based here in Australia, but the shares in that company then are owned by John and Jane Smith, and they've also sold some shares to Rodney Jones, who's actually their sales manager. Some years ago, they brought Rodney in as an additional shareholder. The other important thing that page 7 highlights, and again, this is something we see quite often with clients, is the fact that this company actually owns a building. In this case, the factory where the business is being conducted. Now that's not fantastic. Depending again on which jurisdiction you're in, from an asset protection point of view, that's not a great structure to have. In Australia, it's not a great structure to have from a taxation point either, because companies don't get some of the CGT discounts that other entities might be able to avail themselves of. So important to understand not just who owns the business and how is that owned, but are there any other related assets that cloud or muddy the structure in helping us prepare for an exit plan. We need to understand who owns what. We also need to have an understanding and a conversation with our client about what they're intending to do with the structure. For example, the actual client that sits behind this test model of Smith Engineering wanted to keep the factory and lease it out to the new buyers, but sell the business. Now that's difficult to do when it's in the current structure. So just understanding who owns what in the structure and how it was put together, what the taxation implications are, what the asset protection implications are, is quite an important part of the analysis.